Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Ascension Stargate podcast series. And I'm here again with the reigning champion, Stephanie Massengale. This is her third appearance here on the Ascension Stargate podcast series. And we are so fortunate to talk about all of the things that are happening, both energetically, cosmically, scientifically. There's just so much happening, and we'll bring in Arya today.
Yeah, we'll bring in Arya.
One of those things. It's kind of funny. I call her Arya, but
it's Arya, which is Arya or Arya, but she has an identical twin that's Aria that passed away a couple of years ago. So that's the only reason I correct people on it.
So isn't that interesting? Am I connecting with both of them simultaneously?
You might be. I think her spirit is still around somewhere.
So we'll bring in Arya today a little bit, and we'll see if I'm getting any hits today from the Pleiadians to see if the Pleiadians have anything to give us a little bit of insight. So, Stephanie, how are you today? How are you with all of these crazy things that are happening?
You know, a lot of my clients are having a hard time with all of the chaos, and they don't see sometimes the higher path and what's happening. And I'm like, well, in times of chaos, you've got to really connect more with nature and get out of that energy and realize that when it's chaos, it changes in 2 days, you know? Oh, there's this edict that comes out and then it's taken away. Like there's all this kind of coming and going energy, and it's best just to not get in it at all. Like stick closer to your community. Yes, you need to know big stories. Okay, yeah, that's important. If you live in an area that's affected, you need to know, right? But it really is a great time for consciousness to evolve, because if you can kind of get objective and kind of get clear of it all, then you can really work on your own ascension process. And that's a lot of what I do and try to help people do.
Absolutely. You know, and I'm seeing that also in the clients that I've been working with as well, is it's a lot to do with grounding. The more grounded we stay, and that could be as simple as taking a walk in nature, taking your shoes off and connecting with Mother Earth. Now, it might be a little bit more difficult for the northern parts of the United States and some of the colder parts, but something simple as taking a Epsom salt bath or a sea salt bath.
It's a great idea.
Really helps reground the body, and it also gives you that opportunity for a little bit of solitude and reflection, or to integrate some music, something that is soothing, and it gives that body and your etheric body the time and opportunity to reset, to better integrate all of the changes that Mother Gaia frequentially is going through, so you can now begin to match that resonance.
Right. And resonance is really important. I have that 7.83 hertz resonance. You can get them off YouTube, and I listen to that, and that's really helped a lot of clients calm. Like if you get really upset, you can listen to that and get calmer. That one's really great. And then there was some recent studies that they were looking for songs that would get rid of cancer versus chemotherapy. Did you hear about that?
Yes.
And that Beethoven's Fifth is good. So I've been listening to that every day, and I am seeing just like where I feel better and more alert. And I was like, I'll give this a try. Why not? Right. And I'm noticing, I wouldn't say a huge improvement, but I'm definitely noticing a noticeable change. Let's put it that way.
Right. And, for me personally, I found that I needed to integrate music more into my daily routine. So one of the things that I found that was really beneficial was being a child of the latter part of or earlier latter part of the 80s. There's music that is really energetic. It's really uplifting. It's got that, pre-house techno beat, so to speak. But there's been so many studies, and I remember that the federal government did a study of an era of 1955 to 1962. And what they did is they created an entire city of that era. cars, homes,
Oh, wow.
and music. And then they dropped people into that era of that 1955 to 1962 who actually grew up in that era. So they were between like 18 to 25, that sweet spot of age when things are so visceral and energetic. And the study showed that they started to regress on their age, that their health actually became better. So, with that piece of information, I'm like, I could go back and start listening to some of this music and see, how it feels. And then, here I am dancing in the kitchen as I'm like,
That's great.
and
That's
whatnot.
great.
So, it wasn't necessarily all of the music that I had listened to, but I found that uplifting beat was really beneficial to me. And then, that gave me more energy for my day and I had a better focus. So certainly something to play with, to find your favorite, part and parcel of music and see if that will help you integrate into the change of frequencies that are going on.
Yeah, I love that idea. And if a song resonates, you're going to know. If you don't like it, you're going to know.
Right.
I've always liked ragtime. I don't know why. I just always thought it was great. So whatever the music is that you like, then go with that.
Right. So find that musical resonance and let it speak to your heart. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You ready to talk to Arya?
Yeah, let's talk to Aria. Let's bring
I
her
hope
in.
you have questions. We'll just go wherever we go. All right, you ready? I'll bring her in. Okay,
All
I
right.
intend Arya. Well, this is Arya Vashtal Command mostly these days. Well, hello, dear.
Aria, it is my pleasure to co-create with you. Thank you for spending some time with us through
You're
the
welcome.
vessel of Stephanie. We
I
appreciate
am.
it. Love you.
We love you too, dear. You're super sweet. I hope things are going well up in the colder part of the world. She's down in Florida. She's got it easy.
Yes, it was 22 degrees last night and the
Okay, that's
temperature was
cool.
dropping, so it was a little cool. Uh, we survived, but that's just part of going through the seasons and where we live. So, Arya, we've got a couple of questions for you today.
Oh, you do? All right. Let's see what you've got and see if I'm willing to answer them or not.
Yes, let's see if this is on your palette of things. Arya, I want to talk about something that might be a little bit controversial, uh,
Uh-oh.
and
All right.
and that has to do with some of the belief systems of people. Um, you know, we're seeing some things up in the sky during the daytime, and they've been referred to as chemtrails or contrails, and from our aviation experts, they just say, oh, that's just condensation from the engines.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's the other side that sometimes say, oh, this is a conspiracy. This is something that is being engineered. But there's also something called geoengineering, and that is the engineering of weather. Now, that has been going on since the late 70s. Could you give us a little bit of insight of what we're actually seeing when we look up to the sky and we see all of these crisscross tic-tac-toes that seem to be wide and spreading?
All right. So geoengineering, like you said, goes back to the 70s, and farmers would use them. If you talk to farmers, if there's an area that needed rain and they didn't have it, they would cloud seed and things of that nature, right? So then back in around 1994 is when most of this chemtrail started. And back in those days, there were a couple of countries that refused to let it happen. Cuba was one. Cuba refused in any way, shape, or form, not going to let that happen. And so um, the way you can tell the difference for those in the audience that are like, I don't believe it. It's a lie. It's fake. I don't think that's true. It's just airplane stuff. No, there's a way to tell. Watch the little plane go across the sky, and there'll be a little stream behind it. And as the plane goes across the sky, the little stream disappears, correct? You know what I'm talking about. It's there, then it's not. Now, chemtrail planes are different. It makes a big line across the sky and it widens, right? And if you're someone like Stephanie that's super sensitive, as it falls to the ground, she can smell the metal.
Mm.
She's got a really high sense of smell, and she can literally smell the metal as it's falling, right? And so that's creating cloud cover, right? When it widen, sometimes they'll mark it with an X, and sometimes they'll layer it. They'll just do layer upon layer upon layer.
Hmm.
And it's not just one formula. It's not like it's just one formula of aluminum and barium and things of that nature. It depends on what they're experimenting with. Are you familiar with this or no?
Very familiar with their experiments and their weather engineering to create this anomalous patterns that is changing the way the jet stream is moving on the planet.
What's the reason, do you think?
Hmm. Well, let's think about that for a second, and I will try to break it down in my scientific expertise from what I know, is that when we create nanoparticulate of certain metals, that metals have a conductive and reflective property. So depending on what metals are being used, that some are magnetized and some are keeping the frequency of energetic presences that could be harmful to human beings. It can also change things when they are met with other frequencies. So think of it as if you were to do an experiment of take a piece of iron and then take a file to it.
Right.
You would get these small
You get
particulates,
filings. I know what you're
right?
talking about. Yeah.
Now, we know that iron has a magnetic property to it. So if we were to pass a magnetic frequency over it, that they would all tend to flip in one direction, right? They would go towards the magnetic field. So knowing that there are many types of technologies that are in the sky right now that work with frequency, that we can project certain magnetic frequencies in certain areas via satellite to create that magnetic shift in the nanoparticulate. So if we were to direct, let's say, an energy beam with a magnetic field in a certain direction, we could then have all of those nanoparticulates move in that same direction. That is one way of geoengineering to create a weather pattern within a magnetic structure.
So you're saying if you're going to control the weather and you create these nanoparticles and they're in the air, then you can use it to manipulate or move weather systems in a certain direction. Is that more or less what you're saying?
Correct.
All right. Well, that's fascinating. See, I can never gotten all that through Stephanie's brain. That's why I wanted you to explain that. She doesn't have the vocabulary for that. Um, so yes, there's a whole lot of that going on, and so you have to pay attention to the chemtrails. There'll be days they don't do it at all, right?
Right.
And Stephanie always used to have a blast. She used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina for a really long time. And if a president was coming to town, there was always a blue sky. And every year you can track it like clockwork in October. They do not chem during the state fair in North Carolina. It happens in October. And you will have every day will be clear for the 10 days of the fair. There will not be any chemtrails. And then they slam at the moment the fair is over. So you can see this. I mean, you don't. It's not a rocket scientist. You use it conspiracy theory, or not just be observant. People look up.
Right.
It's really not that challenging. So one of the problems with these glorious chemtrails—they're not really glorious. I'm being facetious. Um, is that there are high levels of aluminum, and aluminum can cross the brain barrier, which causes Alzheimer's. Do you want to address that at all? Or no?
Well, yes. So this is this is economically driven. So if we can control the weather, if we can control the population, and how do we control the population through nanoparticulate of toxic metals? Well, medically speaking, when our human vessels ingest, absorb, inhale these particulates, they seem to have a certain organ in which they will start to inhabit. So it could be the liver, it could be the spleen, it could be the lining of the stomach, it could be the lower digestive tract. And these heavy metals will become the breeding ground for pathogens and parasites. So if we are becoming sick because we're creating the breeding ground, just as like wet areas that are spongy and soft and porous will create mold, right? So we can use that almost same analogy. So if we're creating in our body, our human body vessels, the breeding ground for parasites, then that is a negative effect on our health. The negative effect on our health shows up in gastric diseases and disorders,
Correct.
cancers. So this is how all of these particulates are affecting our human vessel. We're being, unbeknownst to us, we're being poisoned in a nanoparticulate way that creates a negative health effect that then has to be treated because as nobody wants to be unhealthy, right? If you feeling ill, if you're having constant, bowel
Right,
movements that
right,
are not healthy and normal, then you go to the doctor and say, what's going on to my digestive system? They
correct,
do an analysis and then they say, oh, well, you've got celiac, or you have cirrhosis of the liver, or you have Crohn's disease.
correct.
And, then we can treat this with this particular medication. So, as I say medication, you probably know where I'm going to go if we're talking about economic control.
Well, I understand. And so, knowledge is not power. People think knowledge is power. It's not. Knowledge is potential power. You've got to be able to use the God blessed knowledge. You're in deep trouble, correct?
Correct.
So, if you're listening to the podcast and this is new for you, or you already know and you're like, well, my God, what do I do? So, ways to counteract the heavy metals. Greens are great. Greens will help attract that heavy metal and pull it out of your body in your poop. So eating spinach or anything that's got that high green potential. For whatever reason, frozen yogurt also it binds. I don't know why. Now I know it's sugar, but hey, it's a good excuse to eat frozen yogurt. There's something to do with the way the temperature is and the way the bacteria is in the frozen yogurt. You got to have the kind with the good bacteria that also helps pull it out. Do you, as having more background in medicine related, career, do you know of other things that can help counteract it that the listeners would benefit to know?
Yes. And some of the things that we can do is doing a water fast, a water cleanse.
Well,
So,
that's a good thing to say. I forgot about that.
water cleanse is probably some of the easiest, most cost-effective thing we can do is to tabulate from the time that we eat our last meal in an hourly fashion, and we can do, a 24-hour water cleanse, and that helps start to flush all of the cells out of the body that are now atrophied and starts to regenerate with new cells. It creates that process. There's a specific name for it. It escapes me right now.
That's all right. I'll
uh,
take it. You described it well.
but when we drink good water, and again, even if we're getting all of these nanoparticulates, we have to be conscious of getting the best water. And that may not always be from your tap source, and it may not always be from a bottle because we have nanoplastic particulates that are in the water when we're drinking from plastic bottles.
Well,
So,
Stephanie gets it in glass. I have her get it in glass. She
right,
gets
getting
water in
things in
glass bottle.
glass is really the best that you can for what it is.
Right,
And
right.
to run your water through filters, and there's many processes today that are available to us, including hydrogenating water with that infusion of hydrogen into water, which has a anti-inflammatory property. And also, I'll go out on a limb a little bit and say that you can also infuse your water with ozone, and ozonation will also remove lots of harmful particulate and pathogens that are in the water and purifies it in a way. And then what is interesting is when you ingest it into the body, that it oxygenates. So it increases the oxygenation within the body. And when we increase the oxygenation within the body, it gives the body a better chance to do its normal healing processes. It's like putting supersizing something of your oxygen molecules to help use all the natural inflammatory properties within the body to remove all of the pathogens or metals. So always, a good thing to think about is to do, a simple 24-hour water cleanse every now and again. And that could be like maybe twice a month.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And then also the shower filter. My God, you've got to have a shower filter because, as you know, being the fireman, a former fireman, is that most water supplies mix chlorine and ammonia, which creates something called chloramines, which is highly toxic. So at least if you get a filter, I would think it would filter out the chlorine. And I don't know, does the ammonia evaporate off? I'm not quite sure what happens to the ammonia.
Light burns off ammonia. So,
Oh,
they have these new shower filters that look like they have these little beads in them, and they help remove some of the particulate, and they also charge. So, one of the things that I find is interesting, and this is something that is
right.
not a newer technology, but is coming into recognition, is that as we pass water through certain crystals, that each crystal has a frequential property to it. And water is highly programmable. So as we pass water through certain light frequencies, certain musical or harmonic frequencies, and also crystal frequencies, that we then begin to charge the water, and the water then has those properties, which is
That's
beneficial
lovely.
to us as human beings. Now, if we think about that, when you get you take a sip of a fresh flowing mountain stream. Think of all of the minerals and elements that are in that, all of those trace elements, because the water's coming up through the rocks. It's then going and flowing through all of these different stones and minerals, and it is picking up all of the things that our body really needs. So we're
That's
just
lovely.
recreating that in a more, let's say, intentional way.
That's lovely. All right. What other questions have you got? That was fun.
Okay. Um, you know, let's talk about all of the things that are in the sky that we've been seeing, and we're starting to see more since we're on that sky thing. Um, One of the things that we talked about in our last podcast was about some of the drones that were visible in New Jersey. And
Correct.
we have been continually seeing more and more globally in the sky that may have a similar resemblance to a drone, or some that may be classified as what we call now a UAP, an unidentified phenomena.
Correct.
Can we expand a little bit about what is happening, or what we are seeing, just to kind of give us a validation? Is it a drone? Is it a potential UAP that might be of alien or extraterrestrial or interdimensional?
There's a lot going on. I mean, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not like I can say it's just all unidentified flying objects. I can't say it's just all drones because it depends on what you saw. You get that, right? Like
Absolutely.
some are drones, some are your government, some are not. Some of these things that look like light bulbs, like glowing, shining balls of light, are actually trying to do things like clean up the radiation, and like those are like more like what we call skimmers. We call them
Mm,
skimmers. They skim, and they're trying to do that. And then there is genuine, a lot of beings trying to help. And as the humans raise their rate of vibration, they're able to see things they couldn't see before. So they're slowly beginning to see, oh my gosh, I'm more of a bigger part of the world than I thought I was, right?
right.
So there's a lot more, when Stephen Greer talks about, doing a CE5 or going out and seeing things, everybody's going to start being able to see things more often, I think, depending on what it is. I mean, what's your thoughts on it? I mean, what's your take? What's the Pleiadians say about it?
Well, let me just focus in and see if they want to come through, or if they want to give me a message.
All right, either which way. You can translate or do it live.
This will be a little bit of both. So what the Palladians are telling me is, and this is some of the internal knowledge that I've had, is that when we see some of these white balls, and we'll call it almost like a plasma ball or a light being or a light ball, that they can be of many different things. One can be something, as you were saying, maybe a skimmer, but what it is also is very similar to something that would do a reconnaissance before a craft or a being would come
True.
into
Also
this
true.
dimension. So it's like a precursor of testing the energy in the environment before something comes in. It does have consciousness, so it is a sentient being, and it is an extension of either a craft, a being, or an energetic plasma presence. So all of that can be common at the same time. It just has not identified itself as to the surroundings, so therefore it appears in light. It can also be it could also be a being that can come in and is a first integration with you as a human being, because a ball of light is something that is easily identified by a human being. And therefore, there is no resistance to perceiving that as such. What is going to be different and changing in the very near future is that these lights will begin to morph into something in a shape, which will be very resonant with what we would call plasma, and sometimes is distinguished as something being seen as almost like a cloud, fog, or mist. And in that cloud, fog, or mist will come a form or a shape that might be more representative of the physical shape in which this being or entity will take in this dimension of reality, which may be completely different from the dimension in which they normally reside. And I'll give
All
an example.
right, I'm ready.
Um, there is such thing as dragon energy. We as human beings perceive dragon as something like a very large reptile with wings. In their dimension of reality, where they exist, the fifth dimension and higher, that is not necessarily how they present. In many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago, when they did exist on this planet, that physical state was representative of something that was very similar to a very large reptilian or dinosaur type being with wings.
You're talking about the progenitors that shapeshift. That's what you're talking about.
Very similar to that, but not specifically the progenitors. These beings will come in now as beings of light, and they may come into a more similar shape or similar bipedal being that will be more representative of what a human would be like.
And
So
what's
in
the
the very near
purpose of that,
future,
though?
we will
What
see
what's
them.
Yeah, but what's the purpose? Why are they doing that, do you think?
Because they need to integrate their energy and our energy simultaneous. So it's finding the balance of a meeting point, because their energetic is high and we are not quite at that level yet.
No, we're not.
But
No, we're
as we
human.
ascend, we start to find an equilibrium or balancing point in which we can communicate, which is the ascension in which we are right in the midst of right now.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
So as we continue to increase our frequency, our perception grows and allows us to expand in our consciousness and what we are able to perceive. So we will now start to see more that we hadn't seen before. This is because of the reason that Mother Gaia is already increased into her fifth dimensional energy and is now finding what we call a mainstream of frequential balance, meaning that the oscillation will not have these very high peaks and valleys, but will have a certain bandwidth of frequency. We are resonating and uplifting to that frequency to match, so we will experience more on this planet if we make the choice to be open to that.
For those that can see, for those with ears to hear and eyes to see.
That is correct. So not every human being has taken this path in their life in this incarnation to fully go through the ascension process. Some
Well,
people
you know,
have.
the split's in full going on right now. You're going to have the two worlds theory where you really have people having a horrible experience, and those following the light or at a higher rate of vibration are going to be having a pretty great experience as long as they don't allow the news and the crazy stories and the chaos to pull them back down into this darker field. Do you know what I mean? Would
Absolutely
you
correct.
agree? Would you concur?
I would agree with that 100% that the Mother Gaia is splitting into two frequential levels. One
Oh,
will be
that is
five
accurate.
and one will stay in the third. The third level of frequential will experience more hardship. It will be more of the negative polarity. There will still be duality in the fifth dimension, in the higher dimension of the split, yet it will be lessened of that negative polarity and have more of a percentage of the higher polarity of positivity. And therefore, that is the ascension process and where the split will go. People will make a choice, even if it is unbeknownst to them, they will unconsciously make a choice on where they want to reside, and that is part of their soul contract in which they desire to experience as an incarnate human being on this planet in this time.
Excellent. Well, what other, do you have anything else? This is the Pleiadians I'm talking to, correct?
Yes, it is. They're coming through me.
I thought that was them coming through. Tell them they need to adjust the frequency. I'm telling them they need to adjust the frequency just a little bit. They're putting a frequency in it a little bit too fast. I'm going to tell them to slow it down a little bit. They're doing great, but that's just like it's a little bit overwhelming to your physical structure. So I'm like, slow it down just a little. Not you, but them. All right. What else would they like to share? Is there anything else
Well,
now that we've got
they
them
want
here?
to answer to that. And the immediate answer to that is that we need to move people out of their comfort zone. And therefore, the increase in frequency is to almost literally shake them and say, it's time to move. Like the fire's getting too hot. So either step back from the fire or find another position. So the frequency increase is purposeful. And it is creating the path change, and so to speak. It is forcing people to take one path or the other.
Well, there's no sitting on the fence at this point. You
There's
can't
no
do
sitting on
that.
the fence.
No, there's no sitting on the fence. That will not be happening for anybody.
No. People are standing on the fork in the road and they are consciously or unconsciously making the decision which path that they will take. And the way that you can determine which path you're on is look introspectively on what you're feeling. What is your emotional state? And what is your most common emotion? Are you more happy, joyous, blissful, grateful? Or have you been experiencing more sadness, depression, overwhelm, um, feeling negative, victimhood?
Correct.
Those will be determining factors for you to understand where you're at. And it is also a shakeup to give you a choice point in which that you can make a decision, say, I don't want to be sad or depressive or angry or frustrated anymore. I want to be happy. I want to enjoy life. And this is going to be the opportunity to have a dramatic shift in your life, to change and go find your path of authenticity.
Correct. And it's a time of, I call it the catapult. You know, remember the old fashioned catapults that would shoot something over the wall? So if you're like really low and you're depressed and you're watching this video and you think life sucks and I don't know what to do and it's just never going to be any better, I have hope for all of you. So don't think that just because you're trapped over here on the low path that you can't get out. What is happening, which is a beautiful thing from my perspective as Arya to watch, is people are sinking, sinking, sinking. And then some people get so low, they say, no more. And they catapult straight into the light. They catapult out of this darkness, and overnight they're fixing their lives. And all of a sudden, they're on the fifth dimensional frequency. And it's nice to see these ones drop really low and catapult over. Oh, that's fun for me.
That is a beautiful analogy, and we'll take that one step further with the
All right.
analogy of an arrow and a bow.
I like that too.
When you have an arrow and a bow, if you do not pull the arrow back to its furthest point of resistance, then it will not have a trajectory of moving forward. However, when you take the bow and you put it against the bowstring and you pull it back and you keep going back as far as it can go, it moves in exponential speed forward. Henceforth, the catapult analogy and bow is the very same. And this is an opportunity and a way for people to dramatically change their life, even if they feel that they are so-called in the dark night of the soul or going through the deepest traumatic point in their life, that there is that ability and possibility to have a extreme forward trajectory in ascension and change.
That's true. And as the body holds more light and you fill yourself and become more light filled, then your body can neutralize a lot of these negative things. And the higher your rate of frequency goes, the less any darkness can attach to you. And all of a sudden, you are naturally eating healthy. You are naturally letting go of things that no longer serve you. And that's a beautiful process to watch, I think, as well. It's very nice.
Absolutely. So it's changing just about every aspect of your life all at
Usually,
once,
yeah.
all at once.
There's a lot
And
of change that happens.
there is that ability to have those dramatic changes. There's also the ability to have what we call a 1% change. So 1% change per day lends you the affordability of 365% of change in a year if you maintain consistency. So small change over time is also very beneficial
Agreed.
and can be also less confrontational than that forward trajectory of the arrow as well.
Excellent, excellent. Well, what's your part in the game? Like, if I ask the Pleiadian Council that you all are as a group consciousness, I'm assuming.
Mm.
Like I know you're coming through Glenn and you're helping humanity, but are you similar to myself, or are my missions all evolution of consciousness? Would you define your mission slightly different or similar?
Our mission is to bring knowledge of consciousness to the masses and give
Excellent.
them the pathway that might be easiest taken with the least amount of resistance in order to see almost immediate changes in their life. So our job is to also help humanity with their evolution in consciousness by giving them tools, by providing through vessels like yourself and Glenn and other individuals on this planet who have made contracts with us in this incarnation to lead people in many different ways, because not everybody will be resonant with just one opportunity or one option. That many peoples as individuals need more options to find what resonates with them. And whatever words you may say or Glenn may say may be beneficial may also go unheard by some that just do not resonate. So therefore, there are many ways that we are working through many different human beings to create this harmonic in many different ways. So it's like listening to a song that can be played in many different octaves. It's like listening to different harmonies simultaneously. One may be very enticing to you, but some frequencies may not have that same resonance. So we are emitting many different frequencies with the same thematic undertone.
I like that. Very nicely put. Any last thoughts before we bring Glenn back? I think Glenn's coming back. Feels like it anyway.
Hmm. We wish for you to understand that what you are seeing in this time, as we have spoken, that there is that increase in frequency, that it is a time of shakeup. It is a time of uncertainty. It is a time of chaos. Yet, through all of the chaos that you see, it is external. It is to awaken something in you to start to make more clear, concise decisions on what you prefer and what you don't prefer. As we have said, this is the point of making a decision in which planet you will choose to continue your human life on and to finish out what experience that you chose as you came into this incarnation. So, all of this chaos, all of this uh, adversity that is taking place is forcing you to make these decisions. We urge you to make decisions from the frequency of your heart. Run it through the thought of what your heart might say in answering these questions: in which way I want to go. The analytical mind always looks for patterns, and it will stick to the patterns that it feels the most comfortable in, even though sometimes those patterns are not beneficial to you. The heart will speak in clear and concise language. It will always give you a clear direction, even if you disagree with the information that it is providing to you. However, the heart will always give you the information that will be best for your benefit. So we urge you to pay attention that the answers are not going to be found in an external. They will not be found in a Google search. They will not be found in necessarily conversations, judgments, and opinions of other people. They will be found in the truth of your heart. So, therefore, if you again run the information through your heart and ask the simple question, what would my heart do with this information? What decision would I make if this was my heart making the decision? You will find that it will give you an easier pathway to where you need to be. So keep that in your heart space. We leave you with love and light and adoration, and we give thanks for the opportunity to co-create with you today in love and light.
Well, hello, Glenn. He's coming back yet. How did that feel for you? Because I know you're doing this more and more, I think.
Mm.
At
It
least some.
feels very comfortable for me when they come through. What's interesting for me as I channel, I move Glenn aside and allow them to come through.
That's how most people do it.
And
Yes.
when I do that, I'm not always getting like whatever I'm saying. It happens so fast I can't comprehend all of it. So
That's
I don't
what I
even know what
said.
I
They were
say
put.
sometimes.
I don't know if you remember, but I told them they were pushing the information through too fast. I told them they needed to slow it down. The last few minutes was much better because they slowed it down. I was like, you're slamming this too fast. Like they needed to slow it down a bit. They did.
Um, for me, physically in my body, like my third eye is pinging, and I physically feel the connection between heart, throat, and pineal and third eye. It's
So
like it.
you feel them too. Yes, you
I
feel them.
feel them. I feel the connection.
Right. Because it's
Um,
very great love they have for you and you have for them. I think there's
mm,
a lot of love going on there. I think
absolutely, no
there's a
question about that.
great
There is.
connection. So,
It's.
People ask Stephanie this question all the time: Are you energized by it or made tired by it? She's always energized when I come through. She never gets tired from it.
I get more energy when I channel.
I do.
So
You do too. Same way. It doesn't make her tired.
I
People
think
ask us that all the time.
neurologically speaking, what happens, and it happens a lot
Right.
with channels that unbeknownst to them, I mean, some have afforded the opportunity to go through um, an EEC, which is an electronic encephalogram, which they wear that cap on their brain and it
Oh,
maps
nice.
the brain waves. So what I know through all of the studies and research that I've done is that when we connect the heart to the brain, that there is a neurological connection in our nervous system, and that is called coherence. When we get into this coherent state, it allows for us to shift our brainwave. And the brainwave I'm speaking to you right now is a beta brainwave. And as I alter my breathing and set the intention of making the connection, I now am setting the attention to increase the brainwave frequency, which brings me into that theta and gamma brainwave state, which allows that connection to frequentially meet with the balance of where I believe the Pleiadian Council is coming down and I'm coming up to meet them.
Excellent. That's nicely explained. And Stephanie's a unique case. You know, she had that brain injury in childhood. So
Right.
she lives in Delta and Theta. She's never ever in Beta. I don't think she's been in Beta since she was 12. So life really is very different for her. And I don't think she gets it from her perspective. Like she just really doesn't understand because she really is different, you know?
Mhm.
And it's fascinating to have someone that's always living in altered state, but it's just because of the brain injury, right? And so it is an interesting, unique way that she walks in the world, which I kind of like, you know, because for her, she's just never in that beta state that you're talking about. It's
Mm,
not quite the frequency she has access to anymore.
right. Um, and also, I feel like I'm kind of in and out of this state all the time, because I've adopted the practice of becoming more heart-centered, that through that intention, through that practice, it allows me to resonate in the higher states.
Well, the more you channel, the more you will naturally always be
Right.
higher. And when you connect, you'll be very high. And you'll still be able to drive a car. Don't worry. You can still do things like that. Because that was Stephanie's concern early on. Oh my God, can I still drive the car? Of course, honey, you can drive the car. It's fine. You know? And so, you know, but over time, you will stay in these higher states, higher frequencies, and you won't really be dropping much into these lower ones very often.
Right. I like to use the stock market analogy as, from our 1922 stock market decline, everything crashed. But from that point on, there's been an upward trajectory. Now, sometimes it does have its ebbs and flows and it goes down, but it's still on that higher frequency. So the lower dips are not as often. And we as human beings, when we start to become more of this heart-centered practice, that those dips in those lower frequencies don't come as often, and we can get out of them and still continue to make that upward trajectory. And that is our connection to the all that is, to source energy.
And the more you do that, the more unflappable you become. And that's the thing everyone needs right now. Like to get out of the chaos, just be neutral. Like that's fascinating. That's interesting. Moving on with my day because, you know, there's all this energy coming at you to try to get you upset. And that's really not beneficial for you or anyone else. So if you get to this place where you know, you're non-pulse, unflappable, whatever word you want to use, that's where you kind of want to be. So that you just are observing somebody else's reality and you're like, well, that's not my reality. I don't walk like that. I don't talk like that. I don't do that. You know, does that make sense at all?
Oh, that makes perfect sense. Yes.
But that's great. Any last thoughts for me before I go?
Arya, thank you today for spending some time with us. Again, I give my heartfelt gratitude for the co-creation that we've had today and that
Excellent.
we can share it with the masses. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Well, I'm just going to stay Arya, and we can bring Stephanie back after you stop the recording. And I just want to say to everyone out there, you know, hold on, sweethearts. It's fine. It's going to be great. You know, find a community. If you don't have one, reach out to Stephanie, reach out to Glenn, be a part of their communities. They both have community type situations and offerings that they offer. You're not alone. You know, we will make it work in some way or another. If you found this information, you were meant to find this information. You were led to this information. Even if this is brand new to you and you're like, I have no idea what they're talking about, you're still getting the download. You're still getting the frequencies. As always, remember to love yourself. Back to you, Glenn.
Great message to leave with. We love you. We appreciate you, all of our listeners. You are important, you are worthy, and we give gratitude to share our information with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We look forward to seeing you on the next Ascension Stargate podcast series. We'll see you next episode. Have a great day. Thank you.